As time passes, the future of a sovereign Palestinian state looks bleaker. The policies of the successive Israeli governments have been detrimental to the possibility of a two-state solution. The following is a summary of the recent geopolitical developments in the occupied Palestinian territories and the obstacles facing any comprehensive settlement to the conflict. As it stands today, whilst Area A is supposedly under full Palestinian control, in reality there is little difference between Area A and Area B. The Israeli military enter Area A as and when they see fit. Moreover, A and B together make up only 39% of the total West Bank area. So the remaining land, referred to as Area C, including the eastern and western segregation zones that Israel has annexed, amounts to 61% of the West Bank. About half of Area C is completely under Israeli control. On top of that is the land taken to build the segregation wall. Area C can be divided thus: 46% comprises the eastern segregation zone, 17% comprises the western segregation zone, 4% is for the settlement master plan, 2% is Israeli-controlled roads and military areas. There are 47,000 people living in Area C and 33,000 in the seam zone. With Area C under Israeli control, there is no potential for a viable Palestinian state. Jerusalem exemplifies Israel's aggressive efforts to change facts on the ground. The demographic status of Jerusalem has changed dramatically since 1967. Prior to occupation, the Palestinian built-up area of the city covered 14,270 dunams. By 2010, this had increased 2.5 times to 35,636 dunams. In 1967, the Israeli built-up area was a mere 112 dunams, only 0.03% of the total area of the city. By 2010, the Israeli area had expanded to 367 times that size. It now covers 39,627 dunams. During the last 10 years, 70,315 dunams of land have been confiscated. As the chart shows, there has been a steady increase in the number of settlers residing in East Jerusalem since occupation began. However, there are two key periods where the settler population grew dramatically. Firstly, the period between 1977 and 1990, immediately following the signing of the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. This is when the Israelization of Jerusalem began. Then, from 2006 to the present day, there's been a dramatic increase in settlers as a consequence first of Ariel Sharon's policies and then of Benjamin Netanyahu's. Between 1991 and 1995, the Rabin years, one can see that the pace of population growth steadied. Recently, the Israeli government has been able to confiscate land under the pretext of greening the city. All of the areas in green on the map have been designated as national parks. The target is the grab of the land and the establishment of contiguity between the settlements. Specific target areas are the open spaces between settlements, as control of them enables links between them and facilitates the development of through road systems. The Tzurim Valley was declared a national park in 2000, which along with the area surrounding the old city walls creates a continuous area. There are 4 more national parks in planning progress: Sheikh Jarrah, the Mount of Olives, Baba Shara, and the King's Valley, where 200 Palestinian homes are slated for demolition. There are also plans to make the Mount Scopus Slope a national park. The implementation of Plan 11092A would destroy any idea of Palestinian contiguity in the city. The construction of Israeli housing is rapidly occurring and has escalated recently. Israel plans to construct more than 50,000 housing units in Jerusalem by 2010. At the same time, the demolition of Palestinian houses has remained a central part of Israel's policy in the city. The chart shows that since 2000, 1,164 Palestinian houses have been demolished at a cost of over 161 million shekels. There are 3 types of demolition: self-demolition, municipal demolitions, and military demolitions. In addition, close to 22 million shekels worth of fines have been imposed on Palestinians for building without permits. Building permits, however, are nearly impossible for Palestinians to get. To meet housing needs, Palestinians will require 2,000 permits every year. They currently receive less than 7% of that amount. As a result, according to estimates, 1,000 illegal houses are built each year, largely in areas which Israel is seeking to deny all responsibility for. 4,862 housing units across East Talpiot, Har Homa, Pisgat Ze'ev, Ramot and Gilo have already been approved for immediate implementation. Building plans for a further 6,972 units have been submitted for public review. Usually this public review is cosmetic, as any major objections will have been dealt with at a previous stage. On top of this, there are 3,275 housing units awaiting deposit for public review, and plans for 1,653 housing units before the local planning board. Multiplying these figures by 4.2 reveals the number of people that the said housing units will be able to accommodate. In addition to the plans already in progress, there are future planning schemes in place for over 33,800 housing units, including 3,500 as part of the E1 plan. Thus, a total of 50,562 Israeli housing units will potentially be built in Jerusalem in the next decade. This will lead to an influx of over 200,000 settlers, which would have a dramatic impact on the demography of Greater Jerusalem, reducing the percentage of Palestinians from 36% of the city's population to 15%. Through the construction of settlements in and around Jerusalem, Israel has sought to increase the Israeli population at the expense of the Palestinians already living there. A survey from 1993 suggested that 16,917 Palestinians have emigrated abroad. 12,080 Palestinian Jerusalemites were forced to move outside the borders of the illegally annexed Jerusalem. 12,500 currently live in North Jerusalem, inside the boundaries of the pre-1967 Jerusalem, but are now excluded by the Israeli authorities. 7,630 Palestinian Jerusalemites were outside the country in 1967 and thus were never issued with Jerusalem ID cards and so do not have the right to return. 14,482 Palestinian Jerusalemites have had their residential rights revoked by the Israeli Ministry of Interior since 1967. In September 2011, the Israeli authorities served demolition notices to the members of the Bedouin communities in East Jerusalem located between Mali Adameen Settlement Block and An Nabi Musa. The results of such a demolition would be the displacement of 2,500 people. Israel claims that the evacuation of the Bedouins is for national security purposes, to protect the Israeli settlements located around Jerusalem. However, in reality, the Bedouins' land is needed to make way for the E1 plan.
On December 12, 2011, the Israeli municipality of Jerusalem opened a new six-passage checkpoint terminal to the northeast of the city, right at the entrance to the Shufat refugee camp. Palestinians perceive this terminal to be part of Israel's plan to isolate Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank. The terminal will also contribute to the manipulation of Jerusalem's demographic makeup. It is expected that in the near future the Shufat refugee camp and the Anata area will be declared beyond the municipality boundary of Jerusalem, taking the populations of those areas out of the equation. Moreover, it is predicted that when the Shufat terminal is fully completed and operational, the Kalandia terminal will be closed, even further restricting Palestinian access to Jerusalem. In addition, the introduction of new biometric ID cards will be problematic for many Palestinian Jerusalemites, who will find it difficult because of Israeli restrictions to prove that their centre of life is within the boundary of the city, as defined by Israel. Many have been forced to move to the outskirts of the city for a variety of reasons, including Israeli housing policies and the development of settlements. 140,000 Palestinian Jerusalemites face losing their Jerusalem ID cards, which would render them unable to live, work, and for the most part access the city at all. Israel has started to construct Bypass Road 20, which stretches from east to west through the town of Bet Hanina, splitting it into three sections. The road constructs the Pizat Zagiv settlement intersection and connects with Bet Hanin Main Road and Bypass 443. The road is part of the Israeli plans to link together all of the settlements within Jerusalem. The physical division of the city will have significant impacts for its residents. It is predicted that those residing in the Bet Hanina Old City and the northern part of the town will lose their Jerusalem IDs. The road also contributes to the breakup of the contiguity of Palestinian land. On the 29th of January 2012, the Israeli government approved a new version of the National Priority Areas Plan, a policy under which a series of benefits are allocated to specific priority areas. The 2012 decision granted these benefits to 70 illegal settlements in the West Bank. Of these 70 settlements, 29 are located in the Eastern Segregation Zone, 19 in the Western Zone, and 22 in the areas between. Including outposts, a total of 11,516 housing units were built in settlements in 2011 alone. This represents an increase of almost 60% on the number of units built in 2010. These images show how quickly settlements have expanded in just 1 year. In February 2012, Ehud Barak, approved a plan to build a new settlement in the place of the Gaviot military base within the Gush Etzion settlement block west of Bethlehem Governorate. The first part of the plan, which includes the construction of 6,000 housing units, has been approved. This map shows the extent to which it is predicted that the settlements will expand in the near future. There is not one area of the West Bank where we can say that no settlement expansion is expected. Moreover, the way in which settlements are expanding is not arbitrary, but rather is carefully planned in such a way that will divide the West Bank into 4 separate corridors. Prior to occupation, 12% of the West Bank was designated state land. Since then, Israel has claimed an additional 18% and a further 11% is currently classified as survey land, pending a final declaration on its status as state lands. In February of this year, the Israeli Defense Forces Civil Administration in the West Bank began promoting a piece of legislation that would enable settlers to build new roads without planning approval on state land. In practice, they are already able to do this, as they face few repercussions if they build without approval. In contrast, Palestinians are required to apply for permits and are often refused them. If building is started without permission, bulldozers and building equipment is confiscated by the Israeli military. The eastern segregation zone that runs along the Jordan River covers 1,664 square kilometres, 95% of which is controlled by the Israeli military. Israel wants to construct a fence or barrier along the Jordan River. If this happens, 64 million cubic metres of water, as well as the most fertile and productive agricultural land in the West Bank, will be isolated from Palestine. Since September of 2011, the Israeli Civil Administration has issued orders to demolish 360 Palestinian houses in the occupied West Bank, including 131 in the Hebron Governorate, 73 in East Jerusalem, and 89 in the Tubas Governorate. In addition, the Israeli Civil Administration has issued dozens of extensions for expired military orders in locations where the segregation wall is still in the construction and planning stages. For instance, in December 2011, Military Order 2907T was amended and extended. It ordered the confiscation of 161.7 dunams from Atas and Al-Hada villages in the Bethlehem Governorate. The reasoning behind the renewal of the orders is unclear from a strategic point of view, and appears just to be an attempt to ensure Palestinians cannot return to their lands. On December 8, 2011, the Israeli orders for the confiscation of 1,280 dunams for the completion of the construction of the segregation wall northwest of Jerusalem were extended. Similarly, 5 military orders which validated the construction of the segregation wall on 165.7 dunams of Iskaka village lands were extended. On October 13, 2011, 2 new military orders were distributed to the residents of Bet Jala, stating the reroute of a section of the segregation wall running along the city's northern lands. These orders have come without explanation, and it is unclear what the implications will be. Under Military Order 3507T, the Israeli government renewed the confiscation of 386.3 dunams of land east of Jerusalem to enable the construction of the Fabric of Life Road. On February 22, 2012, the Israeli Civil Administration approved the construction of 500 new housing units in the Shiloh settlement and 125 units in the Shevat Hachel settlement. The expansion of these settlements fortifies Israel's grip on the corridor linking the western and eastern segregation zone, further undermining Palestinian contiguity. The decision set the dangerous and alarming precedent of allowing settlers to build without seeking approval from the Minister of Defense. 200 of the 500 new housing units in Shiloh were already constructed and had settlers living in them prior to the government approval. As of 2011, the wall was 774 kilometres in length, with only 51 kilometres of it running along the Green Line. Another 247 kilometres are planned. The status of the wall has not changed significantly. However, the Israeli army has issued extensions on standing military orders for the wall purpose, including in Bet Jala, Walajeh, and Berlin. The Israeli government has continued to annex the lands of Bet Iksa, despite the 2006 Israeli court decision which ruled that the wall should be rerouted to release Bet Iksa from the western segregation zone. The army has not implemented the court's decision, and as a result the village is completely isolated. Moreover, the area has been completely restricted by the military. In the past 10 days, March 2012 at the time of writing, it has been declared part of the Seam Zone, meaning only residents can travel in and out of the area. In February 2012, the Israeli Civil Administration Occupation Authorities issued evacuation orders to Palestinian farmers in Bet Ullah, Hebron, and Nahalin, Bethlehem, stating that the land was illegally possessed. Under Old Ottoman law, unused land can be claimed, with Israel using this claim to have these areas as state lands. In 2008, however, Palestinian farmers reclaimed these lands. These images showed the land that Israel claimed was unused between 2000 and 2006, and so designated as state land. Israel declared invalid the reclamation of the land, despite the evidence that suggests the land was in use between 2000 and 2006. It appears that Palestinian farmers are therefore doomed if they use their land and doomed if they don't, with both potentially ending in confiscation by Israel. On December 12, 2011, Ehud Barak approved the expansion of 2 locations in the vicinity of Efrat settlement in the Gush Etzion block. 40 new housing units were approved in the outpost Givat Hadagan, which is already inhabited by around 40 Israeli settlers. The expansion will see the current trailers replaced with permanent housing units. The second plan outlines the establishment of a farm on the 8th hill of Efrat settlement, Givat Havatiem. This area, 1,700 dunams, was declared state lands in 2004, and plans were set to build 2,500 housing units. However, the Palestinians petitioned against this declaration. In February 2009, the Israeli civil administration rejected the petition filed by the Palestinian citizens and sanctioned the new neighbourhood of the Efrat settlement. When Israel built the wall, they cut off a large section of open space which had been part of Bethlehem. They subsequently declared the area to be state land. The lands in the centre of this area have title deeds, so the Israelis have no grounds to confiscate them, but now they are going to convert the area into a farm. It is now expected that the wall will be moved. The ultimate Israeli goal is that there will be 2,500 housing units, or in other words, 10,000 settlers occupying this area between Jerusalem and the wall. In the area of Bethlehem, Bet Sahor and Bet Jala, the problem has been the spaces left open by the leaders of the areas in the past. The redrawing of Jerusalem municipal boundaries saw the loss of 18,000 dunams from the 3 cities. The settlements of Gilo, Givat Hamatos and HaHoma were all built on Bethlehem land. Then, with the construction of the wall, an additional 4,000 dunams were made inaccessible. This year, the Israeli military authorities refused to grant Bethlehemites permission to go and pick their olives, claiming that everything behind the wall is under the auspices of absentee land, so they no longer have right to access it. The size of Bet Sahor, Bethlehem and Bet Jala is now less than 17,000 dunams, making the land loss more than the current size of these 3 main cities. As a consequence of the wall and the group of settlements that run parallel to it, for the first time in history, Bethlehem and Jerusalem will be segregated.
On the 26th of December 2011, the Israeli High Court of Justice delivered its judgment in the case concerning Israel's quarrying activities in the occupied Palestinian territory, in response to a petition from Israeli human rights group Yesh Din, stating that the quarrying in the West Bank is illegal. Gravel and stone represent the major merchandise export of Palestine. However, many of the mines and quarries from which these materials are extracted are located in Area C, and thus, by and large, are under direct Israeli control. Therefore, Israel is able to use the resources to benefit the Israeli economy and also prevents any such exploitation by Palestinian companies. It is estimated that the annual gravel yield in the West Bank is around 12 million tonnes per year. The estimated gross value forgone by the Palestinian economy from mining and quarrying is $575 million, 7.1% of the total Palestinian GDP. The High Court rejected the petition against the operation of Israeli-owned quarries in the territory and authorised Israel to exploit the West Bank's natural resources for its own economic needs. In its ruling, the court adopted the position that no new Israeli-owned quarries should be established in the West Bank, but that existing ones should be allowed to continue operating. Dorit Benish, the High Court judge ruling in the case, began by accepting the state's view that the Israeli-Palestinian interim agreement permits the quarries to operate in their present manner until a final status agreement is signed. She also used the argument that Israel's use of the quarries does not amount to destroying their capital and thus does not violate international law. Her position is further weakened by the fact that her justification for Israel's continued exploitation of West Bank resources is that the area is occupied. She stated that the territory's economic development cannot be put on ice until the occupation ends. Surely, if an occupied area is to benefit from economic development, the profit should be going to the occupied population. The Israeli High Court of Justice's decision is a direct contradiction of the UN General Assembly Statement A66449, which demanded that Israel cease the exploitation, damage, cause of loss or depletion and endangerment of the natural resources in the occupied Palestinian territory. The General Assembly also recognised the right of the Palestinian people to claim restitution as a result of any exploitation, damage, loss or depletion of their natural resources resulting from illegal measures taken by Israel. ARIJ is planning to assess all of the damage and losses incurred by the Palestinians as a result of occupation since 1967 in order to have a continuous bill of the cost of Israel's exploitation. Before peace can be made, it is essential that the matter of reparation is addressed. The Israeli government's actions regarding Migron outpost have legitimised the theft of Palestinian land. Migron started as an outpost in 1999 on private Palestinian lands. It is located 2.5 kilometres from the illegal settlement of Kochav Yaakov and 7 kilometres east of Ramallah. The illegal outpost has been a controversial issue for successive Israeli governments. Over the years, many have agreed to dismantle it, yet no tangible steps have ever been made to this end. On the contrary, the outpost has received direct and indirect support, and funds have been provided for accommodation and infrastructure. The 2004 Sassoon report on outposts found that Migron was illegal and should be dismantled. Then, in 2011, the Israeli Supreme Court issued yet another final decision calling for the government to evict and dismantle the Migron outpost within 6 months. In 2012, Israeli Minister Zeev Beni Begin reached a compromise with the settler leaders, enabling the settlers to stay at the outpost for another 2 years, after which the Israeli government would build a new settlement for them, 2 kilometres away from the outpost's current location. The compromise has essentially legitimised all outposts. The decision removed any deterrent against settlers building illegal outposts, as it has been made clear that the Israeli government is unlikely to dismantle them, and if they do, the residents will be relocated and, crucially, the land will not be restored to its original Palestinian owners. On the 27th of January 2012, the Israeli government announced a plan for a 475-kilometre rail network inside the West Bank. While it is claimed that the rail line will serve the Palestinian communities as well, it will have a hugely detrimental impact on Palestinian territory, ensuring the disintegration of the West Bank. The tracks will divide the West Bank into cantons and will consolidate the existence of settlements and strengthen Israel's grip on the Jordan Valley area.
The peace process has been relegated down the international political agenda in recent years. Tellingly, at the latest meeting between President Obama and Netanyahu, Palestine was not mentioned in either of the AIPAC speeches. There are a number of factors that have contributed to the shift in focus away from Palestine. Crucially, Netanyahu has succeeded in putting Iranian nuclear capabilities at the world's main focus. Moreover, the Arab Spring has brought many disappointments, and Egypt has lost its dominant position in the region. Turkey and Qatar are vying to replace Egypt, and both are assuming leading regional roles. Palestinian internal politics is also an issue. There is no goodwill between Fatah and Hamas, and there are serious question marks surrounding the formulation of a government, holding elections, reform of the PLO, and security cooperation. The two-state slogan has been used extensively by world leaders, especially since September 2011, but without linking it to the 1967 borders, the term is both empty and meaningless. Furthermore, Israel has been very clear in its statements that it is not envisaged giving up the majority of the territory it currently occupies. In the joint meeting of the US Congress on the 24th of May 2011, Netanyahu said, I recognize that in a genuine peace we would be required to give up...
That in a genuine peace we'll be required to give up parts of the ancestral Jewish homeland. And you have to understand this. In Judea and Samaria, the Jewish people are not foreign occupiers.
His intention here is clear, that Israel will give up parts of the Palestinian territory it occupies, not all. In the same speech, Netanyahu pointed out that 650,000 Israelis live beyond the 1967
lines reside in neighborhoods and suburbs of Jerusalem and Greater Tel Aviv. Now, these areas are densely populated, but they're geographically quite small. And under any realistic peace agreement, these areas, as well as other places of critical strategic and national importance, will be incorporated into the final borders of Israel.
He also stated that the Palestinian refugee problem will be resolved outside of Israel, and that Jerusalem must remain the united capital of Israel, and that Israel must maintain a long-term military presence along the Jordan River.
Agreements have been made, witnessed by the international community, yet Israel consistently reneges on the terms to which it has agreed. It is crucial that the global community and heads of states remember conditions that were set out in the 1995 Israel-Palestinian Agreement. Among others, Israel has breached Article 5 on security arrangements, Article 12 on environmental protection, Article 14 on forests, Article 16 on government and absentee land, Article 22 on land registration, Article 22 on nature reserves, Article 26 on parks, and Article 27 on planning and zoning. Israel has also breached the terms set out in Phase 1 of the roadmap. Under that agreement, Israel consented to take no actions on undermining trust, including deportation, attacks on civilians, confiscation and or demolition of Palestinian homes and property as a punitive measure or to facilitate Israeli construction. Israel has also agreed to progressive IDF withdrawals from areas occupied since September 28, 2000, and to the lifting of curfews and easing of restrictions on movement of persons and goods, and allowing full, safe and unfettered access of international and humanitarian personnel. Most importantly, the government of Israel agreed to dismantle settlement outposts erected since March 2001 and to freeze all settlement activity. As we have seen, these terms have not been met. The international community has a responsibility to demand that Israel complies with signed agreements and international law, or else they become meaningless.